Main thing is just buy under market, know the after repair value.
Welcome back to Life Worth Chasing. I'm your host, Chase Maher, and this show is about helping entrepreneurs build their business around their dream lifestyle. What's up, homies? Chase back again with Life Worth Chasing. And on this episode, we got this super cool dude that I met at the Nashville BRRRR conference, 24-year-old real estate investor. He's acquired over 20 units in the last 2 years utilizing the BRRRR method: buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. And we talk about how he buys deals, how he rehabs them, how he gets really high appraisals on them, and just some of his struggles, some of his failures, some of his successes. And it's pretty cool, inspiring how he went from 0 to 20 in 2 years. So I hope you guys enjoy the show. Let's welcome Dillon Dull. Dillon, I'm super pumped to have you here on Life Worth Chasing. We met at the BRRRR podcast. Actually, the last dude that I had on the show, his episode's coming out next week. He was sitting at the same table as us, the Anson guy from Houston. So yeah, man, I was super impressed with what you're doing, and I can't wait to talk about it. But if you want to tell us a little bit where you're at and what type of real estate investor you are.
Yeah, man. First off, pretty awesome to be here. You've had some pretty cool people on this podcast, so I'm glad to be a part of it. So first off, how I got started was I was fortunate to have my dad kind of in the business of real estate. My mom worked for the government. And long story short, he had a construction company. Before I went to college, I worked for his construction company on the actual crews, doing the painting, doing the electrical. It's from like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. They work those hours. It's pretty insane. So I learned a shitload, or I don't know if I could cuss on here, but I learned so much.
Cuss, brother.
But I learned so much during that period. And then I kept working him over breaks. He was paying me like $12 an hour, but
right.
You know, it was more of the experience of learning how to do the actual construction that really got me started in wanting to buy my own property for myself. So Then, you know, after a few years in college, my senior year, I went to my dad. I said, hey, can you, because he invests in properties up north, it's about 2 hours north. If you're familiar with Northern Virginia, the prices are so expensive. Yep. I said to him, hey, can we buy a property down here and maybe partner together with it on it? So then I found a property off auction.com. So I kept sending him properties off auction.com because that's where he liked to buy. He had a connection there that actually helped show him what the bank reserve was for the properties. So we knew what to bid to get the properties. He doesn't have that connection anymore, but we ended up buying a property. I was in charge of fixing it up. So I got some college buddies. I went with some college buddies. This was only cosmetic work, luckily. So we just redid the floors. We painted. And then after that, it was about 4 months later, we sold it. We went 50-50 on it. So I actually still had to put cash down. He still made me put cash down, even though I was managing the whole thing. It was cool because I still got the experience of learning how to do it. But we made about 15 to 20K off that. We rolled that into another one. Same thing. I hired people. And then made another 15K off that. So we 20, 15K. And when I say 20, 15K, I mean total. So we split that down the middle, whatever, 7.5. And then once I graduated college, we bought a big fixer-upper, one that I probably shouldn't have been the general contractor for. But I was working on it every day, listening to podcasts every day, a lot of BRRRR podcasts, and just, you know, getting that real estate bug and just wanting to buy a property for myself. So midway through, so we actually ended up holding that one for 1 year and 2 months before we actually sold that one, just because it needed so much work. And then I guess we didn't fix it up good enough. And, you know, for flips, you got to fix it up really well in order for it to sell, especially in high income areas. So for rentals, it's completely different because you don't have to fix it up as much. Basically during that time while we were fixing it up, I was looking on Craigslist every day, looking for properties because I had about 10 to 15,000 in my bank account at that point because the rest of it was invested in this flip we were doing.
And just to stop you real quick, when was this? How many years ago?
So this was in 2017. So 2 years ago, about a little over 2 years ago.
And you hadn't bought any rental properties yet, right?
Yep, no rental. I had no rentals at this point. And then,
okay, cool.
So at this point, then I was looking on Craigslist while we were doing the flip every night. I found a property in Petersburg. I didn't even know that area. I kind of just messaged the guy, and he posted for $22,000 or $23,000. on Craigslist. I know that sounds crazy for you people up there or in other parts of the country that are in the high income areas, but $23,000. I called him. I offered 19. He called me back. We settled on 20. And when I accepted that offer, I was so nervous that I was like, oh shit, what did I do? What did I do? You probably felt the same way too. But whenever someone gets their first deal, man, it's just like, you get so nervous, but you have so much adrenaline. You're like, damn, I'm actually buying one. So actually before I actually offered on that though, so since I only had 10 to 15 in the bank, my sister was luckily she works in accounting degree, and she works in accounting, and she has a bunch of money saved up. So I said, hey, can I borrow $15,000 at 9% interest? She said, sure. So that was good. So then I got the money for that, fixed it up, and only needed like $3,000 in repairs. And then after that, I got my first rental property. So that was pretty awesome.
So this one in Petersburg, did you buy it to flip it, or you knew going in you wanted it to be a rental?
I wasn't really sure, to be honest. I was more leaning towards rental because I knew it wasn't the flip kind of area. I knew that a little bit, at least, because I knew I couldn't get too much more for it, even if it was fixed up, because those areas you can't really flip too much because there's not many homeowners that are buying over there.
Right.
But yeah, so I bought it with the intention to rent it. I was going to put a for sale sign and a for rent and like also list it for rent, but I decided to go ahead and rent it out a little easier.
Okay. So dude, what I'm hearing, man, is first, you just took a leap of faith with your father, right? On a flip.
Yeah.
That was your dad, right? And then, then you guys did another one, and then you bought another one on your own. You're pretty resourceful. You just went for it, calling a dude off Craigslist, taking the offer, negotiating, being resourceful, calling your sister. That's your first experience with private money. And, and then fast forward 2 years later, where are you at now?
So now 2 years later, now I own 14 properties around Petersburg and Richmond, and some of them are quadplexes. So in total, I have 20 units. So 20 tenants, 20 doors, if you want to call it that way.
Yeah, man. So 20 units all around the Richmond area. Super cool. And you went to VCU, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So we went to rival colleges, man.
Yeah. A little bit.
Yeah. No, that's cool though. So 20 doors now, 2 years later. So tell me sort of what your process is. If I were to ask you, like, dude, how'd you get 20 units in 2 years? Like, what's sort of your process? How are you finding the deals? How are you funding them? And what are you specializing in?
So after I bought that property, I bought it all cash because I was borrowing from technically not all cash. I borrowed a little bit from my sister, but
that's cash. Private money's cash.
Yeah, it still can be considered cash. Yeah. So after I bought that one all cash, we sold the flip. So we made about $15K, even though we held that flip for a year and 2 months. I think we bought it low enough that, we had enough equity after that. So I bought it, made about $15K off that flip. After that, I found more in Petersburg. I found another private seller off Craigslist. Actually, the first guy was a wholesaler. The first property I bought from a wholesaler actually. But then I found a private guy on Craigslist who had like 53 properties.
Wow.
And then I went to him and he said he also financed them with the lease to purchase. And I was just like, I'd rather just try and get the loan from the bank. So then I put 20% down for the bank and then bought a duplex from him for $43,000 in Petersburg. And that one rented for $960. So it makes a 2% rule, which means, that you can't really find that anywhere. And then that one rented for $960. And then after that, I figured I'm running out of money real quick. So I got to think of a new strategy to, keep recycling my money. Because if you just keep putting down payments down, you're going to eventually lose that money. Well, not lose it, but you're not going to be able to buy more deals. You're still building equity in it. So it's still good, but you're not being able to keep buying more deals.
Did you have a job while you were doing all this?
No. So while I was working on the first house, my dad was paying me like $15 an hour. So that was technically my job because I was GCing it and working on it from like 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 with the other contractors that I hired off Craigslist. But they were okay actually. But I don't use them anymore because they were doing some sketchy stuff and they were always showing up late after that. But
so, all right. So back on it, you basically were like, okay, if I keep putting 20% down on these deals, I'm gonna run out of money pretty quickly. So where'd you go from there?
So then actually, since I already had a property managed, I went to a near local bank right there in Petersburg. And that first property that I bought for $23,000, I put, $3,000 into it, had all in for 26 about, because I was doing the work myself at that time. I went to the bank. I asked for a refinance. And what a refinance is, they basically go and send an appraiser out. They value the property based on other properties sold in the area. And then they give you a loan based on 75. Actually, at that one, I got 80% of the loan to value on that property. But so it ended up appraising for 46. That one I bought for 23. I got a really good appraisal on that. I don't know what happened with that appraisal, but he went way up on that. I was like, damn, when I saw that. Also, another trick I do when I get appraisals, I give the tenants like $50 off rent if they make the place look clean. Because if the place looks clean, that could boost up the value another $4,000, meaning you could pull out $3,000 out of that $4,000, meaning more money in your pocket.
I plan on asking you some of your tips on getting higher appraisal values, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay. Yep. And then so appraised for 46, the bank gave me 80% loan. I think it was 36,000 they gave me out of that. So then they just literally wrote me a check for 36,000. I was like, holy moly, this is insane. Now I have no money into this. The mortgages on that one is about 287. It rents for 620. And I'm just like, holy hell. Now keep in mind, these tenants are a little bit crazier because they're in lower income areas. So there's a lot more turnover and maybe a lot more repairs, a little bit more stress than a normal like high income area that, that have good jobs and everything. But I mean, it's still worth it because I have no money into it. And even if I break even on that, let's just say I break even on that property throughout the whole year, I still have no money into it. And I'm paying the new loan down every year. So it's a pretty
tax incentives, cash flow, mortgage pay down, all that.
And also learning's a huge part.
Yeah. I love that, man. I love that. Okay. So you got a couple flips down, you bought a duplex, and to the 20 units, like how are you finding your deals now? I would imagine that over the next couple of years to fast forward to now, I mean, what was sort of your time frame? Did you buy them all at once or you sort of spacing them out a little bit? How's that all working?
So I usually buy so in 2018, I bought about 9 more. And then this year I probably bought about 6 more. But now the reason why I'm not buying as much is because I have to do the burn. And that kind of takes a little process, especially if all your cash is tied up for that, 2 to 3 months that it's in there. That means you can't buy another one unless you're, leveraging another one out. So right now I'm just trying to refinance them as quick as possible so I can keep turning that money over. And now since I have so many, I have to have a lot of money in reserves and just in case something crazy happens and like all my tenants move out or something. So my reserve, so now I can't I'm trying to save like that money. So just in case something bad happens with the market or tenants move out or, have to put a roof on and stuff like that.
So you're using the BRRRR method. For any listeners that don't know what the BRRRR is, can you explain that?
Yeah, sure. So the B stands for buy. And when you're looking to buy, you want to buy it under market. You want to be able to know what it'll appraise for actually when you fix it up. Also, if you don't buy it at the right value, you could not pull out all your money or you could have money stuck in the deal, which is still fine. You still get the experience of fixing up and refinancing, but you want to try. My goal is to try and pull out all the money that I've left in there. And then number 2 is the rehab part. So once you buy it, you want to know your rehab cost. And what I do when I buy the property, let's say the after repair value is $100,000 and it needs $20,000 in repairs. I don't want to pay more than $50,000, more than 70% of the after repair value. I don't want to have more than $70,000 into the property all in. So if I bought it for $100,000 and at the end of the day, if I bought it with no repairs, I want it for $70,000. Let's say it needs $20,000 in repairs. I want it for $50,000 just so I have that extra equity just in case the appraisal comes back bad, which has happened before, or just in case I can't, just in case the market tanks or something like that.
Got it.
But then after you rehab, you rent it out, you check Zillow for comparables, you get a lease in place. And then as soon as I get the lease in place, I go to the bank, I call it sometimes before the lease is in place, but I go to the bank, I call them and I say, hey, this is all fixed up. There's a lease in place. I've been getting commercial loans on these. Because I don't have W-2 income, so my income actually doesn't qualify to buy these houses. Yeah. So are you getting commercial loans too?
Portfolio, yeah.
Okay. Yep. So 5-year arms on yours. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been getting since what a commercial loan is basically, it does it off the property, how the property's performing. So if the rent's 900 and the mortgage payment's only going to be 400, they'll probably, they have criteria, but that's how they judge whether they'll give you a loan or not. So then after you refi, they send their appraiser everything out there. So let's say on that $100,000 house example, let's say it appraises for $100,000. They'll give you 75% of that, or at least they'll give me 75%. They might give other people 70. They might give other people 80. But right now my bank's going to be 75%. So they'll literally write you a check for $75,000. And then at the end of the day, you're all in for 70,000. The bank gives you back the 70,000. You get $5,000 and you still get the property and you're paying down the loan. And I always try to stretch out the amortization as long as possible, because that way I know I'm not paying down as much equity if I do that, but I cash flow a lot more. And I don't know, I'd rather have the cash flow, and I think I can make more money on the interest I can make more than 5% interest. So that's why I borrow to the max.
For sure. Okay. So to recap on that, we buy the property, and Dillon, you like to buy it at 70% of the ARV minus rehab, right?
Right. Yep. Exactly. That's pretty standard rule. A lot of people use that.
All right. And then when you go to rehab it, what are some of the things that you do when you go to rehab to sort of save money? Now, for me, something that is the most difficult thing that I feel like I do is balancing how I fix up flips versus how I fix up rentals, and figuring out like what are the things that I can save money on for rentals versus what I have to do for flips. And I feel like I do great with the flips, but I sort of overshoot and over fix up rentals and spend money maybe where I didn't need to spend money. So what are some of the tips that you do on your rentals where you still get that great appraisal, but you didn't have to put a whole bunch of money into all the finishes and all that?
Right. So I look for anything that I can keep that is still working condition. I'll try and salvage and try and keep it there, such as, cabinets. If they look a little worn out, I just put a new coat of paint on them as long as they still work. And it still looks good with the new paint, but it saves you like $5,000 not having to pull out those old cabinets, dump them, put new cabinets in, stain the new cabinets and put new countertops in and a new sink. So that's a big way to do it. And appraisers don't really care about that too much. When they go and appraise, they don't see new cabinets and say, oh, we'll give them $5,000 more in value. So that's one thing. Kitchen is huge. I always replace the floors or put new flooring on if the floors are in bad shape. I always stain the floors if they're in bad shape, because when an appraiser walks in, that's one of the main things they look at. They look at the floors and they look at the paint. And then also, if you can add square footage to it, that's probably one of the biggest things, is adding square footage. And also, well, not adding square footage, but if you have to pull permits for that. But if you want to add square footage, you can get a lot of value out. I've never actually done that, but I've actually added a bathroom to one of my properties, because if you add a bathroom now, the appraiser is going to compare it with, instead of 2-bedroom, 1-bath properties, they're going to compare it with 2-bedroom, 2-bath properties. And the difference in value between a 2-bedroom, 1-bath and a 2-bedroom, 2-bath could be like way different, and you could definitely get more than the value you put in that bathroom. So that's another one I do. And just make sure, if the hot water heaters looks old, I usually don't replace it, because sometimes I do, it depends. But if it looks really old, I replace it, because appraisers just look at the outside really. Some appraisers are really picky, but if you put a new roof on, you're not going to get that value back out. You're not going to get that $5,000 back out. The appraiser is not going to come and see, oh, there's a new roof, let's add $5,000 to the. You might get like $2,000 up on the value, but so I just, if it ain't broke, don't fix it for rentals, basically, but just make it look pretty. And I'm not saying put lipstick on a pig. We fix them up still pretty well. I don't want people to get that vibe from me, but we fix them up pretty well, and they're actually pretty livable. So that's the main things I do.
No, I appreciate that. What would you say to somebody that does the same model as you, the BRRRR model, but they actually fix everything to the nines so that they don't have to worry about the property for 10 years? Yeah,
that's definitely a strategy. If you want to do that, I would definitely do that before the appraiser comes. That way you'll get the most value out of it. Now, if you want to fix up to a 9, that's fine. You just might not get that same value out when the appraiser comes. You might leave a little bit of cash in the deal. Like I said, appraisers' biggest thing is location, obviously, that appraisers look at. Now, if you're in like a nicer area than me, and you fix it up better, you might get more value based on that. If you have granite countertops in California, you might get an extra $3,000 rather than, if I put granite countertops on one of my properties, I might get extra like $200 in value. So it all depends on where you're at. But if you want to do it to a 9, you don't have to, worry about maintenance for a while, which is good. I try and make it like an 8-ish. So I'm still making pretty well, especially at first, because when a tenant's in there and they start complaining, it gets annoying trying to coordinate contractors around going in there when the tenant goes in there.
100%, man. Yeah. I think that it's very location dependent. So a place like yours where the price points are that low, a countertop here in San Diego is going to cost the same as a countertop there, but the price difference is just so much more drastic. So you really got to be watching where you're putting your money in a market like that. Changing the roof is going to cost the same as much there as it's going to cost here, but the property value is $500,000 versus $50,000. So where do you want to put that $5,000 roof? And then in terms of getting your properties rented, you're definitely in an area that doesn't just rent right when you put it on the market, like somewhere like San Diego. So what are some of your tactics to get a property rented and also keep it rented and not have to deal with turnover?
Yeah, that's one of the toughest challenges that, we face in these lower income areas. But basically, when we have people apply, some of them don't even have any credit scores. Most of them actually in Petersburg, they don't have any credit history. So it's hard to go off that. The main thing we look at is income and, no felonies. So if they have enough income and they have no felonies, we do check their credit to make sure they're not in, a bunch of debt and they're making payments, or they had car repossessed. That's a red flag. Or if they had evictions, we automatically say no to evictions. But it is tough trying to find people in those areas that will stay, more. Well, they love to stay more than a year, but sometimes they fall behind on their payments. And once they fall behind on their payments, they're catching up every single month. It's just like they're chasing themselves. So it's a tough strategy that we try, and it's a tough thing to try and fix, but we're doing our best to try and get the best tenants in there at first by checking those things. Like we put a house on the market about 4 weeks ago. We've had people tour it and everything, but no one's been good enough. So what I think is I'd rather keep it vacant for an extra 3 weeks, 4 weeks and get a good tenant in there than put a bad tenant in there. But I'll also Section 8. I've noticed my Section 8 tenants, they've been staying for however long because they don't feel like moving. Everything's already set up for them. So so I'm trying to lean a little bit more towards that, especially in these rougher areas. So that way I don't have to worry about evictions and stuff like that.
Yeah. So 80% of my portfolio is Section 8.
Really?
And and it's incredible when you get the right Section 8 tenant in there. We could talk about it a little bit after this episode if you want. But all in all, you get your money on the first every single month. And if you get the right Section 8 tenant in there, they will stay in there for years. Yeah. And they're super grateful that you gave them an opportunity. And if you're anything like me and you're a good, solid, consistent landlord, they're really going to appreciate the opportunity and they're grateful that you allow them to live there. It's pretty wild, man. And it's actually I really only want to do that when I'm dealing with those rougher areas is Section 8. The problem is the inspections, and you got to fix it up, according to the inspections. So it's a little bit more hoops you got to jump through, but it's worth it in the end.
Exactly. Yep.
So in terms of, you got 20 units now, you're still buying deals. You got 20 units you got to manage in terms of rentals. Like, what's your team looking like now? How are you sort of managing the deals, managing growth, and managing, your business and management?
So right now I actually hired a virtual assistant to help me. He lives in India, and these people are freaking smart, man. They're pretty awesome too. They're hard workers. And the thing is, you don't have to pay them that much. I pay mine $4.75 an hour. And people think, oh, you're screwing him over. But the average salary in India is like $1.34 an hour. So he's actually making equivalent to about $150,000 in the US from me paying him $4.75 an hour. Now, when I hired him, I was, had some thoughts. I was like, when do property managers actually need to be at the property? We do all our property showings through lockbox code. So the tenant calls them, they send them a picture of their ID. The virtual assistant answers the phone and gives them the lockbox code. And then after the tenant leaves, the virtual assistant calls him back saying, hey, did you lock it up? And then he says to the tenant, hey, we change the locks every night, but we actually don't. But no tenants are going to come back and steal stuff. It is kind of sketchy to think, but until I have a problem, I'm not gonna worry about it.
I like that.
But yeah, so because so many times I'm wasting times on showings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just dealing with tenants, and this lets the tenant go in by themselves, look at the property by themselves, and actually talk with whoever they're with, saying, oh, I don't like this, and then it just makes them feel more free when they actually call you back and say, I don't want it, or I want it. So you get people that actually want the property in that case. And after that, he does all the applications through, we got Buildium. So he does all the applications through Buildium. He runs all the credit checks for me. And then after they apply, he just calls me, says like what's on their credit report, what their income is. And he actually calls the old landlords for me, calls the jobs to verify their income. So
amazing.
This guy, it's pretty awesome, man. So I'm glad to have him, and it's been making my life a lot easier. He's also been coordinating the contractors. Whenever there's a repair, the tenants now call him, and then he calls. Sometimes I tell him to find the contractors on his own, and he does it, and he organizes with the tenant. The contractor goes, fixes it without me doing anything except saying, yeah, that's a good bid. All right, we'll do it. And then that's it.
That's incredible, man. Amazing. So you sort of probably built out like a checklist of systems and processes from doing it on your own, and then essentially hired that out. One of the biggest issues that I found with VAs, almost my entire business is ran off VAs. Mm-hmm. And the biggest issue that I found is in the beginning, I expected them to know how to do what I wanted them to do. But when I got to the point where I just laid out exact step-by-steps, they're as efficient as anybody in getting those done. So I appreciate you laying out like some of those systems and processes. And that's amazing, man. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So in terms of finding the deals, what are your systems right now on going after deals? Are you buying them off the MLS, wholesalers? Are you doing direct to seller marketing?
I've been thinking about that. I've been trying and make my own marketing system, doing some direct mail. I tried Deal Machine for a little bit, but then I found myself getting tired walking around the neighborhood or taking pictures and everything. So then I ended that. So right now I've just been buying from mainly wholesalers. I have a huge network of wholesalers here in Richmond. So, and they know I'm a good buyer. So they always come to me if they want it, if they have a deal. So that's pretty cool. And so right now I haven't really been working too much on marketing, but my goal is to be like you and have a bunch of, different VAs cold calling. I just haven't had the time to build out those systems, like you said, to actually go into marketing, especially because I haven't done it myself. So I'm just buying off MLS, looking on Craigslist, looking on Facebook Marketplace, which you could find a good amount of deals on there. And then I also bought one off the MLS too. So, and auctions too.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, if there's not a need for the direct to seller marketing right now and everything else is working for you, doing that direct to seller marketing, it's a whole nother ball game in the sense of needing somebody to qualify them, going on appointments, negotiating deals with them. But that's where you can get some pretty home run deals. So whenever you get to that point, man, I'd be happy to share with you some pretty cool tactics about that.
Yeah, I definitely like to hear them, because I do like buying from wholesalers, but then I see like, oh my gosh, I could have bought this for $15,000 cheaper. It's just like, oh my gosh, if I found this myself, I would have saved $15,000. Not that the numbers don't work for me with that $15,000 added, but I'm just like, oh my gosh, man, I could have got this for such a better deal if I found it myself.
Yeah, I know, man. It's pretty wild, man. Some people can make some serious cash on that.
Yeah.
So in the sense of getting into this game, like, did you get into real estate so that the cash flow could just cover your living expenses, or do you have like a sort of long-term plan with this and a long-term vision?
Yeah, I got in at first just, trying to get some cash flow going, because I didn't have a job at the time. So I was just trying to basically live. I live pretty cheap. I don't have a girlfriend or anything. So that saves a lot, like, $50,000 a year, but no, I'm just kidding. But, no, so I first bought it for cash flow. And now since I found this refi strategy, eventually what I want to do is, like, once these are paid off, I want to owner finance them to younger people like me that want to get into the game, and just hold the mortgage for them, and they can deal with the tenants. That's my eventual goal. And then move to like maybe apartment buildings or something like that. I mean, I know that's probably most people's goal to move to upper units, but also to move to, higher income areas too. I'm kind of just waiting for a little downturn in the market for me to actually buy in those higher income areas. Cause there is good areas in Richmond that are like $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 houses. And, if the downturn, when the downturn happens, I'm going to see what the prices are. And that's when I'm going to try and jump in to those higher income areas and maybe sell off a little bit of my lower income area stuff. But it all depends on the market and, what changes in my mind.
Absolutely, man. I like that, man. I like that a lot. Not rushing anything, but understanding that if you want to keep growing, there are more opportunities out there. I think a lot of us want to get more involved in that commercial space, but I really like how you have that vision of, doing some seller financing, helping others get into the game and, making your money work for you when they're paid off. That's pretty cool, man.
And right now, the lower income area is a little bit safer, I think, in case a downturn comes, because I feel like those areas won't depreciate as much. When the houses are worth $30,000, how much more can they actually go down in value? And also, even if they do go down in value, if you have a loan on it and the tenants still live in there, or you get new tenants in, the rent goes down 20%. If they go, then you're still good either way. In those higher income areas, you could, when you lose all that equity, if you're not cash flowing and you just lost all that equity, and it just kind of, like what you said earlier, when you bought in 2008 at the peak of the market, you probably had to kick your stomach when you saw that.
Oh, it was terrible, man. I saw my house go from 200,000 to 135,000.
Yeah.
I wasn't using the strategy you were using. Of course, I didn't know about it back then. So can you break down all the numbers and the process on a recent deal? You can pick either a mistake deal, a home run deal, or just a regular single or double deal, your choice.
I'll give you a mistake deal.
Perfect.
Right. So I'll switch it up. I don't know what other people give you, but I'll give you a mistake deal. So I bought a house here in Richmond. And when I think of Richmond, I think of it's a better area than Petersburg. So this one I found on Craigslist. I bought it from another wholesaler. And he had it listed for $40,000. I offered 33. He came back at 34. I said, okay, I'll buy it for 34. It was a 1 bedroom, 1 bath, just single family house. It could have been a 2 bedroom, but one of the rooms was really small. So I just called it a 1 bedroom, 1 bath. But so I fixed it up. I had to pull permits. I had to ended up having to pull all new electrical in it, which I wasn't expecting. And then also all the floorboards were rotted under the carpet. So we had to replace a bunch of joists, and they were rotted by termites. After I bought it for $34,000, I ended up putting I think I'm all in at $56,000 now, when I was expecting to be all in at like 45, 46. And then I went to the bank. I went to refinance it. The bank went out, sent an appraiser, and I met the appraiser out there, and he seemed really cool. He seemed like, oh yeah, come on, I'll help you out. And the appraisal came back at $40,000. And after I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh. I tried to get a new appraisal. I think that was a bad appraisal. I think it should have been at least $50,000. But I talked to the lenders. The lenders didn't want to go through the trouble of getting a new appraisal. Maybe it's because it was such a low loan amount that they didn't want to bother going through all that work to get a new appraisal. So it appraised for $40,000. I have $55,000 into it. I guess it was because the houses were so small. That house was so small, it's like less than 500 square feet. And I didn't factor that in. But also, one of the comparables he used sold 2 years ago. The house right next to it sold 2 years ago for like $28,000. And usually appraisers don't use comparables that are sold over a year ago. So I tried to call him out on that. He wasn't really answering my calls. So in the end, I still ended up pulling out the money because I needed it for another property. So the bank only gave me $30,000 when I was expecting to pull out like 45, because I was expecting it to appraise at 60, and they give me 75% of that. So I ended up leaving about $25,000 into the deal, and my mortgage on that property is about $180. But I have a Section 8 tenant in there that pays $855 a month. So I mean, I'm making a big spread, and I'm making a decent return on investment, but it could have been a lot better if I was able to pull out a lot more.
And that's sort of the beauty of this BRRRR method, is even on the biggest mistake like that, you're still cash flowing. Let's just call it $500 a month on $25K. So whatever the return there is, it's not terrible.
Yeah, it's about 15 beats the stock market.
Yeah, exactly. That's amazing, man. So, well, thanks for sharing that, man. Do you have sort of any, like, if you were talking to somebody and they were just getting started and they wanted, they wanted to be like Dillon, they wanted to buy 20 units in 2 years and using the BRRRR method, what's the best way for them to get started?
So I would say just know your area really well, know what it's going to appraise for and the after repair value, because that's huge. That's where I messed up on. I wasn't able to pull it out. See, if that was my first deal, that could have really screwed me over because I would have left 25 into the deal.
You probably never would have done another deal again.
Yeah, I'd be like, damn it, I suck at real estate. Yeah. But there's just so many different factors with the BRRRR strategy. But the main thing is just buy under market, know the after repair value, and talk to lenders beforehand to know that you'll get approved for the loan. If you're taking an initial loan on it, like hard money, you should definitely talk to lenders beforehand and see if you're able to get approved for a new loan once you fix it up. And also ask them what the seasoning period is. So, sometimes banks make you wait 6 months or a year before you're able to refinance for the new value and pull out that money. And also know the seasoning period. So basically just know that you'll get approved and know the seasoning period. Oh, and know the loan to value that the bank will give you. So if they give you 75%, 70%, 80%, factor that into your numbers and make sure that you're able to get what you want out of that. If you're pulling out 75, 80, usually it's between 70 and 80. So that's not too big a deal. But then after that, you just keep refinancing or keep repeating it. So keep buying, keep renting, keep refinancing, keep rehabbing, and keep doing it all. And it's a pretty awesome strategy.
I like it, man. So at the end of the day, it's all about first understanding what your loan options are, what the loan to value is going to be on a refinance, understanding what the seasoning period is, which is how long you have to own the property before you can refinance it, learning how to underwrite the deal, learning what your rehab is going to be. Personally, I always factor in 10 to 20% more on my rehab for the numbers. What do you do something similar?
Yeah, recently at first I wasn't doing that. Then I was like, damn, I'm going over budget
every time.
I'm going over budget on every property. So now I sometimes I factor in like 30% more.
Yeah,
it's insane.
Yeah, on a rehab like yours, where there a lot of times it's like 6, 10, 15, 20K on rehabs.
Yeah, so my biggest one was probably 20-ish K, and then my smallest one was probably like 3 to 4K.
Yeah, so on something like that, 30% makes sense. On rehabs where you're doing 40 to 60K, usually you're talking a little bit more like 10 to 15%. So overestimating what your rehab is going to be and really trying to factor in what you're going to get on that appraisal and then just keep repeating it. So that's amazing, man. Dude, 20 units in 2 years, that's definitely not something to not be proud of. So Dillon, where can we find you? I know you got a YouTube page, you got an Instagram page. Go ahead and shout those out. We're going to throw the links in the comments so that people can sort of start learning from you and following you on your journey.
Yep. So my Instagram is at Dillon Dull, DILLONDULL. And in YouTube, you can just type in Dillon Dull. I post a lot of videos of me renovating the houses and showing you what I do and the before and after pictures. So you might be able to learn a little bit from it. I try and put as much knowledge in there as possible.
Well, the videos are super good, man. And they're not doctored up like some guru out there. They're just real. They're raw. They're organic. I really like them. I definitely follow you. And so I hope everybody else does too. Dillon, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Chase. Thanks for having me, man.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for listening to Life Worth Chasing with me, your host, Chase Maher. If you like the show, smash that subscribe button, leave me a rate and review. You know what? Screenshot the show, share it on Instagram, tag me at I am Chase Maher, and I'll repost it. There's hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and you've made the decision to listen to mine, which is so cool. I'll see you on the next show.